This is part 38 of my series on my N-gauge model railway project. Previous parts cover the project from its inception through the creation of the baseboard, selection and laying of track, building of scenic items, obtaining rolling stock, etc. The project is ongoing. This part deals with the coming to my layout of the Great Western Railway in the form of a Dapol Hall Class locomotive and some Graham Farish and Lima GWR coaches. As you'll know if you watched other videos in my railway series, my main loyalty is to the LMS, the London, Midland and Scottish. I grew up in Leicester in the British Midlands, and my grandfather, my dad's dad, drove for the LMS and for the Midland Railway before amalgamation. My uncle Peter also drove for the LMS and then for British Railways after nationalisation in 1948. And Uncle Peter died on the railway in an accident when driving a steam locomotive for British Railways in the 1950s. So, given my family connections, it's natural that what I principally model is the LMS in the British Midlands, and the period before the war is what appeals to me most. My granddad retired in the late 1930s. But I was at Tiny Railroads in Delhi, Ontario, near where I now live in Canada recently, and I saw that there were quite a number of Great Western coaches in British N-gauge by Graham Farish and Lima for sale there at reasonable prices. Certainly way less than it would cost me to import them from buying from the UK. If I hadn't found this GWR rolling stock locally, I don't know if I would have brought the GWR to the layout, but since I was able to pick up those coaches reasonably, I decided to get a GWR engine and give the Great Western representation. I researched quite a bit before taking the plunge and decided to buy a Dapol Hall Class loco. I wanted a reasonable sized loco that could pull a mainline passenger train and which worked in the 1930s, and the Hall Class seemed entirely suitable and was available. I dithered between Dapol and Graham Farish, as there were pros and cons to both. The newer Graham Farish models have some excellent detail, and the drive system of the Dapol models, introducing a drive shaft between the loco and tender as it does, involves some compromise with realism and detail in the cab and tender area. But ultimately I decided to go with the Dapol because, apart from the issue with the drive shaft, the detail on the current Dapol models is very good, and the Dapol drive system and the traction tyres they use mean that the Dapol locos can pull a good-sized train up a fairly steep gradient, something that's important on my layout. Bottom line, the latest Farish models may look slightly better, but I was afraid that they wouldn't be able to manage a decent-sized train on my layout. So here is the Dapol engine that I bought as it arrived in its box. You can see the spare traction tyres at top left. This is Sketty Hall. I didn't have any strong preference for Sketty Hall specifically, although I do prefer the full Great Western livery to the shirt button version. Here's the loco on the rails, ready for running in. The drive shaft between the loco and tender can be seen here just below the level of the cab window, but being black it doesn't really stand out. It does of course mean that the lower parts of the cab and the tender front can't be modelled with any detail. You can see the drive shaft even more clearly here as it comes from the front of the tender. The motor is in the tender and drives the wheels of the loco via this drive shaft. Both the loco and the tender have pickups. Other than the issue with the drive shaft, this seems to be a nicely detailed and good-looking model. I believe there was some discussion on forums as to whether the shape of the boiler was exactly correct, but it looks fine to me, though I'd be the first to admit that I'm not a major rivet counter. I was quite happy with the look of this loco when it arrived. The livery seems very neatly done and looks great. The wheels are nice. There is quite a bit of separately fitted detail, which was almost unheard of in N-gauge not too long ago. Unlike earlier Dapol models, the instructions said not to lubricate this loco before running. The standard running in was recommended, at least 30 minutes in each direction with no load at moderate speed, with more recommended for the loco to reach full stability. So I set it to running in on the layout. Here are the Great Western coaches that I got from Tiny Railroads, Graham Farish on the left and Lima on the right. The bottom two Graham Farish coaches are GWR Suburban, and the third coach from the bottom on the left is a full brake, which may be Great Western but carries a British Railways running number here. The rest are all GWR mainline stock. The Farish from top to bottom are 3 corridor composites and 3 corridor brake thirds. The Lima are 3 composites, 2 brakes and 2 buffets. The two brands clearly differ very significantly in colour, with the Lima coaches having much more of a custard cream colour. I'm certainly not an expert on the Great Western, but to my eye the Farish colouring looks more appropriate. Here's the loco after running in with the 5 Farish coaches. Well, not the 5, there were more than 5, but with 5 of the Farish coaches behind it. The engine had no trouble pulling these round any of the lines on my layout, even when there were gradients and sharper curves. Although if the engine was stopped with a train on a curved gradient, it might have some trouble getting it going again, which is hardly unreasonable. But points and double curves like this seem to cause no problems, which they certainly can for some locos with some trains. This is another place where some locos struggle. No real gradient, but the curve is fairly tight, making the carriages harder to pull, and the power seems to be a bit weaker on this section of the line. Here's the loco drawing into Bilston Halt. And here's the train in Colville Station. I don't actually have a station big enough for a 5-coach train. Space is limited on my layout, even for N-gauge. Here's another view of the train in Colville. And here's the loco with the train behind it back on the viaduct. Again, you can see the drive shaft here, although it's not particularly obvious from any distance away. And here's the loco with 6 Lima coaches. I guess the Lima colouring doesn't look at all bad like this, but it would certainly be very noticeable if Farish and Lima coaches were mixed together in the same train. The Lima train on the outer branch of the intersection again. With these 6 coaches, the loco had no real problems. Here's the train topping the gradient up to the viaduct by the yard. A closer view of those Lima coaches. The front one is a brake, then a composite. And here's a buffet and another composite. And over to the other side of the viaduct. The viaduct itself causes some problems. Pronounced steps seem to form at each end of the span where it connects to the feeder tracks. I resorted to a little gentle filing to smooth things out there. I hate to take a file to tracks, but trains were really having problems running on and off the viaduct span. Now down under the viaduct span, this is the Cato viaduct set that span comes from. Under the footbridge, which is the footbridge is from an Atlas kit, presumably meant to represent an American original. And now the Lima train is in Colville Station. And the long view of the train there. And from more overhead. And here's that Great Western loco, Sketty Hall, next to 2 LMS locos, the Ginty and the G2 Super D. I have no intention of abandoning my primary focus on the LMS, but I'm happy to be able to represent a little something of each of the big 4. And yes, a southern train is also coming in the near future, and a GWR pannier tank for some GWR goods and branch trains. But that will likely be it for locos from other parts. My main focus will stay on the Midlands, and especially on the LMS. Now let's see a bit of running video of the GWR stock. Okay, see what we can do here. The Great Western Railway comes to my layout. Famous last words in the form of the Dapol, or Dapol, I'm never quite sure which you're supposed to say, Sketty Hall and a bunch of, well, in this case, Lima coaches. What are we doing here? There you go. So there's the Dapol Lima, the Dapol Sketty Hall, and those Lima coaches. Essentially, I actually have one more. I have another buffet, but I didn't see any point in putting two buffets in this. This is the C57, C59 sound card in the Kato sound box, and it may well sound a bit strange to you. It sounded strange to me at first. I've sort of got used to it now, and I actually don't mind it. Like, I only have one other Dapol engine, and they both tend to behave the same. They pull very well. They've got that drive system where they use the motors in the tender, and it drives a drive shaft that goes through and drives the engine. And they can pull, and they've got traction tires, so they pull very well, but they're a bit, I don't know, I've run them in, but they're a bit sort of hesitant. They don't seem to run, their speed seems to go up and down a bit for no good reason. The other engine I've got is the Empire of India, the A4, the streamlined A4. I mean, he's pulling that largish train up the famous last words, now he's getting wheel slip. Well, okay. I shouldn't have stopped him with it. I mean, it's pushing it really, isn't it? Stopping him with the you know, the coach is right on the curve there. So what have we got there? That, of course, is Sketty Hall, and then there's a number of Great Western Corridor coaches. Let's see if he'll... of course he's decided he doesn't... there's the buffet there. That's the buffet. And then there's a break at the back. And those are Lima. Now, the colour of them looks a bit strange to me, I have to say. Let's take him round the other. I'm going to take him not on the outside line, but the outside part of the inner line. So he's going across the crossover there. He generally doesn't seem to have any problem with pickups. I guess he's got both loco and tender pickups, so he passes over things like that crossover, which has a sort of dead zone in the middle, without a problem. Now he's going up the incline again. See, so long as I keep him going up the incline, he doesn't have a problem. He will have a problem if I, if I stop him on the incline, which is fair enough. That's going past the ratio cattle dock there that I just built. We'll stop him in Colville Station for a moment. Of course, the problem is Colville Station is not long enough by any means for a 6-coach train. I don't have an engine that's long, a station that's long enough for a 6-coach train. Alright, let's bring him round again. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to change his train and put the Grand Farish coaches on him. So we'll just take a break here for a moment. Okay. So now I've put 5 Grand Farish coaches behind the Sketty Hall. And we'll just take him round here. Famous last words, he's coming uncoupled, I see. He's not very well coupled to the train there. The train's sort of following him. But he's is not really coupled to it. And that's probably because I think that front coach, it's my mistake, that front coach is not actually railed properly, I don't think. So it's not surprising that he's not coupling to it. Well, this isn't working, is it? Okay. Let's see what we can do here. Let's try and rail this coach again. And now can we move in the bridge there? Bring the other coaches up. Okay, let's see how we're doing now. Oh, for goodness sake, and he's come off again. And now he's decided he wants to stop. To resort to the poking stick. Well, I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't like that coupling, I don't know. I find with rapido coupling, sometimes it's just one particular thing doesn't want to couple to another particular thing. You just have to, sometimes you just have to change the order of the coaches if they, yes, he keeps losing that coupling. He keeps losing that coupling. Can't get him up the hill. I cannot get him up the hill with that coupling, and now, whoops. There's nothing very obvious wrong with it, he just doesn't want to work with that coupling. I don't want to stop him on the crossover particularly. Well, he's certainly tightly coupled to that. I don't know. Let's try. I've run him with all of these coaches before, but not necessarily in this order. And as I say, the order can sometimes be critical. I don't know. Let's see if that works any better. Oh! I guess I didn't get that coach railed right after all. Goodness gracious. Such hard work it is trying to make things work. Oh, for goodness sake. And then you get the one that is properly railed off. Are we ever going to get a train here that actually hooks up and runs? The first four coaches there are all Grand Farish Great Western Corridor stock, so you're looking at them here from the compartment side, I guess. Okay, finally we got him round here with the train, so we'll slow him down here so you can see him in the other camera. See there, you're looking at them from the compartment side, I guess. Now, the coach on the back there is kind of cheating a bit. That full brake, that is not actually a Great Western. Well, it may well be an ex-Great Western coach, but it's more, it's British. It's got a British Railways running number on it now. I think he had about 3 of those as well. I just bought 1 of those. Yeah, I actually bought 3 Great Western brakes. There's only 1 brake on there. The third coach in the train there is a Great Western Corridor third brake, but I actually bought 3 of those because that's what he had. He had 3 composites, corridors, and 3 brakes in the Grand Farish. He did the Limas were a better distribution. They had composites and a couple of buffets and a brake. We'll turn the points. We'll change the points so he goes round the other line by Bilston, by the Cattle Dock and Bilston Halt now. Well, there you go, you know. Bit of a struggle getting the train hooked up and running there, but he is running. Let's stop him in Bilston, in Colville Station for a moment. Still too big. Still can't quite get all his coaches in there, but anyway, let's bring him round then. Up the gradient again. As I say, the Dapol engines do run nicely up the gradient. So they can pull well, and we'll slow him right down there. There you go. Steady haul. And in this case, as I say, 4 Great Western Farish coaches and a full brake, which is cheating a bit. It's not really Great Western, but that's it. That's the Great Western. Come to my layout. I have no intention of abandoning my loyalty to the LMS. The LMS is basically mainly what I model, but I decided it was fair enough to have a token representation of all the big 4, especially since I was able to pick up these LMS coaches locally at a fairly reasonable price, which is a lot cheaper than importing them from the UK. I do actually have an LMS pannier tank engine coming as well. Not an LMS, a Great Western pannier tank engine coming as well. So we're going to get 1 more Great Western engine, but I expect that will be it, the Great Western. But then I'll be able to do a little Great Western goods train as well if I want to, and I've got the siphon already. That was the thin end of the wedge for Great Western. The siphon was the first thing I got.